A few months back, I made a video titled "The First Major Mistake That Game of Thrones Made," and I highlighted the title being the first mistake that the TV show made as an adaptation because it completely disregards the magical elements present in A Song of Ice and Fire. And well, today I've decided to follow up that video with the second major mistake that the Game of Thrones TV show made in adapting the source material. And for me, that is just simply aging up the overwhelming majority of the characters. The characters' ages in the Game of Thrones TV show and the A Song of Ice and Fire books have been a hot topic of discussion for well over 30 years at this point, with a lot of people going as far as to say that aging up the characters in the TV show was actually a good decision, and one of the things that holds back A Song of Ice and Fire is all of these terrible, weird, and gross things happening to children. And I simply couldn't disagree anymore. All of the characters being incredibly young, many of them children, is a crucial part of A Song of Ice and Fire and the story that George R. R. Martin is trying to tell. A major theme of the books is the idea of the world corrupting the innocence of children far too early. A great example of this is Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys is 13 in Book 1. This is a child who doesn't know much about the world, and compared to everyone else around her, she really is just a little girl. And this is very prevalent in the way she thinks, talks, and acts. There is this childlike innocence that Daenerys has in Book 1, an innocence that is very quickly and very brutally torn from her when she is exposed to the true horrors of the world, and treated like a full-grown woman, even though she is only 13 years old, and very much a child at this point in the story. It is quite tragic, in fact, that she ends up getting pregnant at such a young age, that she is married and sold to Khal Drogo, that she endures all of this so early on in Book 1, and this informs the character that she will be later on. Some of the most tragic lines regarding Daenerys Targaryen is when she looks at the girls around her and views them as children, and speaks about how being a child is a life that she used to have, but she is a woman grown now, that there are things she would like to do, there is fun that she would like to have, giggles that she would like to share with her friends, that she just simply can't do anymore because she's not a child. And while when you take that statement on face value, it might just seem like, oh, Daenerys is a queen now, so obviously she has more important things to do. But when you take a closer look at it, you realize the tragedy of what is going on. This is a 14 and 15-year-old girl, a literal child, reminiscing and getting nostalgic for the life that she had 2 years ago that she should still currently have, because she's still a kid. And even though a lot of people are going to dismiss this next point, when you see Emilia Clarke, who at the time of Season 1 was in her early 20s, portraying a character that is supposed to be in her early teens, you definitely have a different perspective regarding the character, even if you don't mean to. Seeing Daenerys in this state, she is a fully grown woman because the actress is fully grown. It's much harder to sympathize with the childlike innocence and recognize the childlike innocence in an actress who is no longer a child. Daenerys in the Game of Thrones TV show comes off like she has more agency at times, like she is more mature at times, like she is just more adult, because aging her up and having an actress portray her that is so much older than the actual character changes the audience's perspective on what is going on. Her relationship with Khal Drogo in the Game of Thrones TV show feels far more understandable, even though it's still gross, because the age gap is not as prevalent. While in the books, Khal Drogo was in his mid-30s, and Daenerys is in her early teens, so there is this gigantic age gap, not to mention the fact that he is more than twice her height. It is just a far weirder experience, and this is there intentionally, so George R. R. Martin can make a point that in this world, childlike innocence is quickly corrupted. A great example of someone mentioning this early on in the series is what Ned Stark says to Catelyn regarding Rickon and Bran during Catelyn 1, A Game of Thrones. Catelyn tells Ned that Rickon is scared, that Bran doesn't always understand, that Ned, for all intents and purposes, sometimes pushes their children too far, too early, and Ned's response is simply that Rickon will not be a toddler forever, and that winter is coming. Ned Stark's parenting decisions revolve around the fact that this world does not allow for children to properly grow, and this theme is specifically very potent for the Stark family, considering Robb Stark. Robb Stark in the Game of Thrones TV show is played by a man in his early 20s, a man that has a full beard, who is quite tall, quite muscular, and for all intents and purposes, a fully grown man. This makes Robb Stark in the TV show feel, well, like a man. He commands the respect that a man would command, and his decisions have a lot more weight behind them because he is older. And to just sum up my points, when you have an older actor, there is going to be a different perspective given to the character. Compare this to Robb Stark in the A Song of Ice and Fire book series. Robb is a child. He is 15 years old when the War of the Five Kings begins. This is a kid who is in way over his head. He is absolutely terrified. He has no idea what to really do. He cries in his brother's arms because he just doesn't know if everything's going to work out. In the TV show, Robb Stark is a man leading an army. In the book series, Robb is a kid leading an army, and this makes his arc far more understandable and far more tragic. And while this is partially a video for another day, Robb's marriage to Talissa in the Game of Thrones TV show is again just showcasing the frustration with aging up the character. Robb both looks and acts like a fully grown man, so when he randomly decides to break such an important oath to just marry a girl that he meets on a field, it comes off really randomly childish and stupid. Compare this to Robb in the books, who was a kid who was injured, then had sex for the first time, and because he is a kid who respects his father's ideals, decides that he must marry her so that he does not dishonor her any further. It completely changes the dynamic of the character. But Robb and Daenerys are easy examples to point to, with the TV show aging up the characters and causing some problems. Where this gets really interesting is with the fully grown adults in the TV show compared to their book counterparts. In the TV show, Ned Stark is played by Sean Bean, who was in his mid-40s during the recording of Season 1, while Ned Stark in the book series is 34 years old during A Game of Thrones. Granted, Ned does not feel like a man in his early to mid-30s in Book 1, because in terms of his mental state, if we were to compare it to our own world, he definitely does feel like someone in his 40s or 50s, far more mature, and this is a byproduct of the fact that this world forces you to grow up much faster. This also recontextualizes Robert's Rebellion in terms of the timeline. If you subtract 17 years from Sean Bean's age in the Game of Thrones TV show, that places Ned in his late 20s during Robert's Rebellion, while in the book series, he is a teenager when the rebellion starts, so it makes a lot more sense why he is so aggressively traumatized, because this, for all intents and purposes, if he was from our real world, is still a kid, or at bare minimum, a young man, having to go to war and experience the hardships of life. It just simply isn't fair, and the same thing applies to Catelyn Stark. One of the reasons that Catelyn doesn't like Jon is because she is essentially an extremely young woman when Ned Stark, at least in her eyes, cheats on her. That would obviously have a far more detrimental effect on a young woman still in her developmental years than it would someone who is in her late 20s, early 30s. My point is, the Game of Thrones TV show aging up all of the characters completely recontextualizes and changes the way we view them. Even if we don't mean for it to happen, it's just a subconscious thing. The last example I'll give is Jon Snow. Jon, in A Dance with Dragons, is a 16-year-old kid. He is not a fully grown man, while Kit Harington was in his 20s during season 4 and 5, with a fully grown beard. Seeing a fully grown man in his mid-20s be betrayed by the Night's Watch definitely hits really hard, but seeing a 16-year-old kid who just started ruling way too early get betrayed just feels so much worse. So with all that being said, the second biggest problem the Game of Thrones TV show gave us is aging up the characters and recontextualizing the way we viewed them. So with all that being said, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace.